Hey everybody, we've got a great video for you today because we have some insider knowledge and a look at a very exciting upcoming model, the Scout.
That's right. Now, for those of you who do not know, Volkswagen and Scout are tied together, and that's because Volkswagen has the rights to Scout, and they're going to be building, in the very near future, an all-electric Scout.
And in this video, we're gonna talk deep about some really exciting news that we have about Scout because our producer Zach just got done with an 800 plus mile trip road tripping a group of Scouts with some of their leadership team down to the groundbreaking in South Carolina. And we have some exciting new developments about what's going on at this company. But let's take a little step back, Nathan, and talk about this vehicle because while the new brand is called Scout, the old brand was actually under a larger company.
That's right, International. And International Harvester was the full name for Scout in the early days. But Scout, the actual genesis of Scout goes back a really long time.
Yeah, that's right. And I've got this book here. This is one of my favorite books. I've actually owned an International before. It's one of my favorite companies. And the Scout 80, which was the first Scout, launched in 1961. Production started in 1960. But International as a company dates back to the early to mid 1800s. I think they built their first gasoline engine in 1904, tractor company, heavy truck manufacturer. And in the late 50s, there was this guy named Ted Ornis who came up with the idea of a small enclosed four-wheel drive utility vehicle. And people don't realize how important the Scout 80 is in the world of SUVs because prior to the Scout 80, we had the Willys Jeep, which, Nathan, was a very effective vehicle, but it was pretty rough and tumble.
There wasn't much out there that was usable as a hard-working vehicle. Bear in mind, back in those days, the idea of a utility vehicle was actual utility.
Right.
Being able to work on the farm, being able to work in industry, and basically working as a daily worker as opposed to a commuter.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, Willys or Willis, depending on how you want to say it, when the Jeep returned home from the battlefield, I got the name CJ, civilian Jeep, and they were largely farm implements, like a CJ2, 3, even to some extent, maybe some like the early 5s. They were open top primarily, typically had no doors, and they were very slow, very agricultural, very effective. But Ted and his team had the idea of taking that basic philosophy of a small, rugged four-wheel drive and making it a little bit more usable on a regular basis, putting real doors on it, a real top, and making it more livable. So the Scout 80 launched, and it was a big success for International. And you know, you can kind of go back and forth depending on what fan you're talking to. But in my opinion, the Ford Bronco really, will say, borrowed a lot of the Scout 80 design elements.
Without a doubt. As a matter of fact, the Scout 80's wheelbase and a lot of its overall design elements, the leaf springs, the solid axles, the type of frame it used, very similar to what was later on used by Ford.
Yeah, but Ford did something smart, and they took the 4-cylinder that the Scout had, and they realized people want 6 cylinders and 8 cylinders.
Yep.
And they launched that vehicle with a V8. International, this is a fun story, initially to combat Ford, came out with a turbocharged 4-cylinder in the early 60s. But keep in mind, they were a tractor company, so turbocharging was like a natural evolution for them. It wasn't a big success, and eventually they launched the V8 Scouts and then the 800s and the Scout 2 in 1971. And when did Scout production end?
Well, it ended in 1980, but really it ended a little bit before that because you could see the sales numbers, they were falling apart.
Yeah.
And they just didn't have vehicles that could really compete. Their old nemesis Jeep came back with a remarkable vehicle at the time. If you recall, Jeep built the Wrangler the
CJ7, Wagoneer.
Wagoneer.
Yeah. You got it.
Yeah, the Wagoneer. And the Wagoneer really took away a lot of sales from International. But at the time, International did have an interesting portfolio of different vehicles that they were building. It was more than just one or two. There were like 4 or 5 different types of vehicles that we, regular civilians, could buy.
I don't think people realize just how big this company was. I mean, you can talk about the Scout, but you also had like the Travelalls and the trucks. And that's before we look at like the bus division and the van division. I mean, this book is over 600 pages of everything that International has built up until this point, which was 100 years of International fire trucks and wreckers and big rigs. And I mean, it was a really impressive company. Ultimately, they really fell under mismanagement throughout a lot of the 70s to the early 80s. And then it kind of crumbled, but it turned into, or it became part of the Navistar group, which became its name, I think, in 86, if I remember right. And then International has been building trucks with Navistar ever since. And then we've got some very important things that we need to talk about. There's a company called Traton.
That's right.
Which is essentially a subsidiary of Volkswagen that has many, many different brands. And in 2021, Navistar becomes a wholly owned subsidiary of Traton. This is from their website. And that really is what allowed Volkswagen the rights to the Scout name. And in 2022, we heard rumors and then officially the launch of a new brand, Scout Motors.
That's correct. Now, keep in mind that there are certain things that we can discuss and not discuss about this, because what happened was Volkswagen/Scout invited us, that being me, over to a meet and greet in order to talk to other Scout fans, to talk to this new group of people that were going to be running Scout, which started with just 2 people and eventually grew into an actual automaker. And we got a chance to get an idea of what they were designing or what they had in mind for their design. And just to be on the safe side, I can't say too much. However, the internet is absolutely chock full of images that are relatively along the same lines of what International / now Scout is thinking. Bear in mind, International is no longer part of the name.
Yep.
It's only Scout. So from here on, it's just Scout. So the various versions of the Scout, and there will be a few, they're all going to be under the name Scouts. And our buddy Zach, who is our producer, went to the groundbreaking for the new facility that is going to be built in South Carolina. And what he did was he drove from the old plant in Fort Wayne,
Yep.
carrying a brick, I kid you not, from the original factory floor, all the way over to this place in South Carolina where the groundbreaking is taking place. And it's basically just an empty field, but they already have the vehicles there and everything else that are going to chop up that ground and turn it into an actual facility in the very near future. It looks like that they're aiming for a 2025 opening of the facility around mid-2025 before production starts in 2026.
Well, and this is where things are interesting, right? And so I asked Zach to really get a feel for this company because he was with a lot of the management.
Yep.
Now, as we mentioned, the parent company is Volkswagen. So I was curious, like, is this going to be, something called a Scout, but it's really a Volkswagen underneath? Is it going to have Volkswagen anywhere in the name? But what's interesting is Scout wants to make it very clear Volkswagen is being hands-off.
Yep.
They are letting them do the development. They're going to be built right here in the USA. And from what it looks like currently, there is going to be little to no Volkswagen involvement that the consumer will be able to tell in this product. And Zach actually discovered something really interesting. After talking to some of the strategy guys, he learned that this vehicle is going to be on a bespoke platform, which is very interesting because throughout the Volkswagen group, you've got a number of different brands, Skoda, Seat, Porsche, Audi, right? And there's a lot of platform sharing.
A lot.
But Zach confirmed that this Scout is not going to be based on MEB, which is like the Volkswagen architecture. It's not even going to be based on PPE, which is the brand new super high-tech Porsche platform. This is going to be a bespoke vehicle, it sounds like, from the ground up.
That's right. That's what they mentioned to me as well. And what they intend to do is make this thing beefy from the get-go. They want it to be off-road capable, to make this the most off-road worthy vehicle they can possibly build. They are definitely looking at the Hummer and other vehicles that are already out, that are all electric, the Rivian, that off-road. And they're looking to capture a lot of those people who may be disenfranchised with perhaps the pricing or the size or whatever of the Hummer, or perhaps they're looking for something to go right up against Rivian. And I feel that that's more of the direction they're going in. And in addition to that, they straight out said that they want to make this vehicle more than one vehicle. So they're looking at a platform that is modular, that can be used to build several different types of vehicle on that one platform.
And Zach confirmed that they will be launching the truck and the SUV simultaneously. Now, we do have some sketches from Scout Motors of what it's going to look like. We'll put those up now, and also like a little teaser of the front end. But it looks to be, at least from the sketches, a proper four-wheel drive vehicle that's all electric. Now, why is it going to be all electric? Well, Zach had a chance to interview someone from Scout Motors to learn a little bit more about the future. The sounds like the lead strategist even.
Yep.
So we're going to cut to some of that footage now and find out more about what's going on.
Why the decision to just go ahead and go full steam ahead as an EV company and not have ICE models and not have hybrids in the product set?
It's a great question, one we expect and get a lot, and I'll answer it through three perspectives. Perspective one is just what we see happening in the market. And the reality is to see a EV market that has grown 40-50% year on year like we saw last year. Yes, not as fast as it was growing, but still quite a convincing result anytime you see plus 50% year over year. The other data points we like is we ask customers, we see the industry asking customers after they bought a car today, what type of powertrain do you want to buy next? We see the data. Right now they're telling us 30, 40, 50% of them want to buy an EV next. Right now, the EV market is 8.5% of the industry. We see 40% of the customers saying they want to buy an EV next, despite looking around and seeing, if we're honest, expensive cars, limited models, not the greatest infrastructure. So we see no reason to believe that that EV intention won't come to life as we see more model diversity, better infrastructure, on and on and on. The second thing, which I would say, is the competitive landscape. We've seen a pure play EV company do basically over 400,000 units a year at a price point that most of that business was somewhere over $60,000. We see a newer EV entrant coming into the market, and at a price point of over $80,000 on average, they did over 50,000 units a year in 2023, despite being around only for a few years. So there is something, when the market delivers a compelling product at the right price point, there is certainly room for more EVs in America. We have to be honest though, some of the other EVs, especially the EVs that are sitting on a lot next to a combustion vehicle equivalent, those things need to deliver cool factor, they need to deliver innovation, they need to deliver credibility and performance, and they need to do it at a convincing price point. And honestly, when we look around, we don't see a lot of that outside of the two brands that I mentioned to set this conversation up. And then the third point, which I'll bring up, is simply a matter of focus for Scout Motors. We see the regulatory landscape honestly being led by the states. Despite what happens at the federal government, we see roughly 40% of the market following California's lead and moving towards a 100% EV mandate. So we have to recognize that Scout Motors will be in business in 2035 when those mandates are set to kick in. And of course, we want to get out in front of that by being an all EV company. The other part of that is simply a matter of focus and, I would say, cost discipline and cost efficiency. We can't do everything. So we need to get to maximize the value of our dollar in terms of where does our R&D go, in terms of what's the assembly shop doing here. And we think that by going fully EV and only EV, not trying to invest in duplicate factories, duplicate powertrains, duplicate models, that's how we maximize the value of our investment.
All right, Nathan, so let's talk a little bit about this factory, because they're really excited. They actually are bringing in such a presence. They got naming rights for the road, right?
Mm-hmm, that's right. Yeah, they actually Scout Motors Drive. So that's what they're going to be known as, Scout Motors. And they're going to be providing many jobs and this whole facility right there in South Carolina.
Yeah, so it's Blythewood, South Carolina. It's somewhat close to Columbia. Now, Zach confirmed they're trying to ramp up to 200,000 units annually in South Carolina, 40 jobs an hour. That's a lot of units. And they're also targeting and employing 4,000 workers for this factory.
Yeah, and that's not even counting the amount of people they're bringing in from the outside. Keep in mind that when you have an infrastructure like this, you have to feed this factory. So there's going to be hospitals, schools, and everything else that are going to be developed around the area. They already anticipated that as well.
That's great, yeah. And currently Scout has 350 employees. So it went from nothing 2 years ago.
Yeah, two people, basically.
Yeah, to 350. So it's already going pretty quickly. And, you know, Nathan, this is what gets me excited, right? Is there are so many startups that we could be reporting on that we typically don't, because they don't have the leadership team, they don't have the money, they don't have the funds to really, in our opinion, make it into full-scale production. But Scout Motors is unique that it's separate company, a startup, but it has the funding of this mega corporation. And it's got the people behind it to make it happen.
I want to mention something that was discussed a long time ago when I did go out there and talk to these members at Scout, and that was they were aware of the fact that if they brought out a Volkswagen pickup truck or Volkswagen off-roader, they would have an uphill climb because the brand right there already saturates them with a little bit of baggage. However, when you have a brand new name that at the same time has real history, you're able to build an all-new vehicle that's immediately competitive, and you can kind of take the whole Volkswagen image and move it aside. And they're fully aware of that because they darn well know that competing in the United States with off-roaders and pickup trucks and whatnot, a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, it sure is. But from what it sounds like, from the little we know about the product, we've asked or not, they're being pretty tight-lipped. It sounds like it's going to be a true four-wheel drive EV. And launching in calendar year 2026 is going to be the target here. And the vehicle will be revealed this summer. So we're pretty close, at least, to probably some design finalizations on what it's going to look like and it be engineered like. I'm really excited about this, Nathan. I'm a big Scout guy. You know, I was a little apprehensive at first when I heard the Volkswagen connection, but then on this trip that Zach did, they're really embracing the history.
Yes,
They started at the original Fort Wayne assembly plant. Along the way, they stopped at major players in the Scout world, like Super Scout Specialists based in Ohio, which is one of the leading part manufacturers. They had members of those guys on the team as well, working on this road trip here. So they're really embracing the community. There's a forum which you can find over at Scout Motors, where they're apparently really listening to people's input and what they want. So check out the forum. And they're really paying attention to the community. So it's not some huge corporation saying, this is how you want to Scout. It sounds like it's a ground-up operation that is really paying attention to the history, paying attention to what enthusiasts want, building it here in the US. This is a cool thing, Nathan.
It's a very cool thing. And here's the great news for everybody. Even if you don't like Volkswagen or if you're not into the idea of bringing back Scout, this is going to force other automakers to up their game, because whether you like it or not, more electrification is coming. So at the very least, having something that is really capable coming into this network means that all the boats have to float higher, because that water level is going to go up.
Well, folks, we'd love to hear what you think in the comment section below. A huge thank you to Zach for this road trip. We'll include a bunch of pictures, obviously, in this video, but check over at tflcar.com, where you can get a lot more detailed coverage, his write-up on the trip, as well as the groundbreaking. And Nathan, we'll see you on the next video.
Absolutely. See you guys.